Welcome to Cloud and Clear, the podcast by SADA for innovative business leaders and technology enthusiasts, where we explore how Google Cloud is transforming the industry and what that means to you. Now, here's your host, Tony Safoian.
Mr. Morgan Reed, welcome to Cloud and Clear.
Thanks for having me.
Information Officer of the great state of Arizona. I can't believe you're here. It's a Sunday.
Thanks for having me, Tony. Happy to be here.
I'm sorry the AC is not working on Sundays.
It's okay.
You're literally in the hot seat. Thanks for being my first customer, our first client to be featured on Cloud and Clear. It's an honor to have you. The timing worked out fantastic.
It did.
And I know the world's really excited to hear from you.
We'll see.
You know, the last time we got together, we were filming this great video at Next for Google, and there was like an hour of great content. And you know what they do? They boil it down to like 3 minutes.
They left a lot of good stuff on the floor.
Exactly. So this is the makeup for that.
Awesome.
This is all ours. We control the editorial rights, everything. We're gonna leave in all the juicy bits.
We're gonna tell our story.
Exactly.
Great.
So before we tell our story together, I think it'd be interesting for our listeners to know a little bit about you, get to know you a little bit better. So, State of Arizona CIO now, and just tell us a little bit about how long you've been there, how that all came about, and I was super interested to find a little bit about your private sector roots.
Sure. So this is actually my first government job. I've been state CIO for a little over 3 years. I was hired in October of 2015. And what I was told was that there was 400 people that applied for the job of CIO of the state of Arizona.
Wow.
I was not one of those people. So I was actually on one of the committees for the predecessor, my former CIO, Aaron Sandine. He and I went to college together 20 some odd years ago. And at the time he approached me, they needed a private sector seat filled on their committee because they didn't have quorum and they couldn't meet and they couldn't decide on things, so they were getting backed up. And I was doing them a favor. Hey, you've been in the private sector a while. I worked, the last time he and I worked together out of DeVry, it was at Intel in the late 90s, early 2000s. And then we had gone our separate ways. Since after that, I went to GoDaddy. I was employee number 80. It was, I had come off of going to Intel when they were at 50,000 employees, leaving when they were at 80,000 employees. A lot of bureaucracy, a lot of red tape, a lot of talking about what we're going to do and not a lot of doing it. And when I got to GoDaddy, it was really liberating because we were this startup. Nobody knew what GoDaddy was. Some of my friends thought I was working for a porn site when they heard the name. I'm like, no, that's not what it is. We do domains, we do websites, we do hosting. But back then, I was a Windows system administrator / data center guy because they really only had 30 servers in the data center. It was this small little colo. And I would go down there 1 day a week, maybe every 2 weeks to rack a server or two. And they had this hosting business that they thought was going to pick up. You know, they had a Windows server for Windows hosting and a Linux server for Linux hosting. And over the 10 years and 10 months I was there, we ended up building that to, I think when I left, we had 4,000 employees and 30,000 servers in their data centers. So I was the guy that had to make the data centers happen and kind of grow that scale. You know, we were really, if you think about it, we were the cloud for small businesses before they called it the cloud. So we didn't know that's what it was, but we were like, hey, let us be your IT shop. We're going to host your domain. Oh, you want it, a website? We can build that. We have tools. You want marketing? We have that. SEO. But we had to grow quickly. I think for the first 5 years I was there, we were doubling in size about every year. And it was just keeping up with that hyperscale. And we were, as much as our employee count was doubling, our server count was growing even faster. So initially it was the one data center in Mesa, and then it became one in Mesa and Phoenix, and then Mesa and Phoenix and Chandler. And then we decided to go international, and I was responsible for, helping scout the locations in Amsterdam. We set up a colo there. Then we wanted to go to Asia. We opened up a colo in Singapore. So all of a sudden, I came from, I was employee number 80 at this small company. I had a globally distributed team of, 30, 40 people operating data centers 24/7 around the globe. So it was humbling just being part of that growth. But then when they sold to private equity, not that long ago, the writing was on the wall for a lot of us that had kind of been there and built it with our bare hands to, if we didn't, the joke was, Yahoooglesoft, and if you didn't have Yahoo, Google, or Microsoft on your resume, you didn't know what you were doing, and clearly you didn't belong here, and you couldn't be part of the future of this company. So we took our exit, and a lot of us have done well after that. I have friends, one of my friends that's actually on my committee now that I run that group for the state is the CTO of Choice Hotels. He and I, he was the dev manager, I was the data center manager, and we kind of built applications and services together. So, it was a great time to kind of grow up in that space. When I left GoDaddy, Expedia actually recruited me to run their global data centers. So, took it from Arizona and Seattle to same thing. We went to Amsterdam, we went to Singapore. We, kind of grew globally. And I had a really good thing going. I think when I started at Expedia in Arizona, I was me and one other guy were the highest ranking guys. We were directors in Chandler. I think I had about 12 people reporting to me. And by the time I left, I had 50 people in Arizona, 30 people in Seattle. So I kind of had that best of both worlds, right? I was looking at property. I was going to summer in Seattle, and I was going to winter in Arizona. And I thought, this is the dream, doing what I love. But the state called me, and my predecessor actually, when he and the CTO and the chief strategy officer all left on the same day in January, right after Governor Ducey took office, they left, and they said, you should apply for my replacement. I was like, why would I ever go work for government, right? I mean, I had a really good thing going and love what I'm doing. And the more I looked into it, I think I said, tell you what, I'll interview. They're never going to give me the job. I've never been higher than a director in the private sector, but if it'll get you off my back and get you not bothering me anymore, I'll go ahead and apply. So first interview was in April. Fast forward to October when I finally took the job. But what did it for me was the governor's chief of staff, Kirk Adams. He actually, painted a picture for me. He said, no CIO has had the support of a governor that this CIO is going to have of this governor. And we want you to do big things. We can no longer incrementally improve. We have to transform. We have to leapfrog. We have to do things that the private sector's done. So we actually want somebody that's coming up in their career that's still trying to prove themselves and do big things versus somebody that's climbed the mountain and now wants to, put their feet up and rest on their laurels because this state can't afford that, right?
Right.
And the demand was there to go fast, to go big. So when we came in and started doing things, we had the full support of, as we call it, the ninth floor, but we had the support of the governor's office.
That's so important.
We would not have been able to do what we've done over these last 3 years without that.
I hear that of every CIO that I know or every line of business leader. It's the support of, in this case, the governor, the CEO of the board. It just comes up over and over again as being such an important part of anybody's ambition to do transformational things, right? Because there's this element of risk. The easiest thing is to maintain status quo, right? It
is.
Very few people get fired for maintaining status quo.
Yep, especially in government. Public sector, what I've learned. But yeah, he painted the picture of a couple of things that were lacking. So we had, I think, 27 different database technologies. We had over 20 data centers on-prem. There was a high cost of ownership for those. We later found out that was a third-party consultant group that we hired ended up coming in and saying the state could save $30 million per year if we consolidated data centers, much less move those to the cloud. So that was something we did. He also, chief of staff also told me that the state had 30 different email systems. And even back then in my interview, I was still deciding whether or not I would take this job. He said, the governor has worked for private sector organizations, as have you. Every successful business runs on a central communication system. So you don't have finance and marketing on one system, manufacturing on another. And that's really what the state was doing. There was no global address book. There was no way to contact people. It was literally, let me have my people call your people and set up a time we can meet, or get their email address so I could send them a message. So the opportunity to consolidate down to a central email system with the cloud was there before I even took the job. And once we started on that path, I knew that, if I wasn't successful doing that, then they would replace me with somebody else that was going to do that. I mean, it was one of those must-dos. And although I had never migrated email system before, I said, this technology is proven, and there's multiple ways we can go. However, if we're going to do this, we're going to do it right. So we need to hire a good partner that can make sure that they guide us along the way.
we work with a lot of large organizations, and there's definitely some things that are very, very unique in state and local government, especially in just broader terms like public sector versus enterprise. But there's a lot of things that are like an enterprise in any state. The biggest thing that we run into oftentimes is we get very, very far down into an evaluation process with a customer, especially large customers. And, it's not, you could have done everything right, and, all the math works out, all the technical validation is sort of overcome, the security concerns are handled, everything is lined up. But there's this big difference. There's sort of two different types of leaders at the end. There's ones that can't get it over the line, even though it may be the thing they want most in the world to do, right? Move to the cloud, move to G Suite, move to GCP, whatever it is. Do something transformational. It is what they're super excited about because they know it's a career-defining moment. There's those who can't or don't at the very, very end when it gets tough. And there's those that do, and it's sort of like red pill, blue pill. Mm-hmm. And you were distinct at the state of Arizona in your leadership of the evaluation process and actually not only getting it over the line, and now fast forward a couple of years, you've made these great strides, but getting it over the line in the first place. So I think a lot of people, a lot of your peers want to know, and it's probably you talk to a lot of people about in smaller groups, but for Cloud and Clear and our listeners, how did you actually get it over the line?
So the first thing we did, we had to be forthcoming and say, we feel confident in doing this, but we haven't done this. So we're going to go ahead and first, we're going to look at options in the marketplace. We're going to come back with recommendations. So we're not going to just try to shove one vendor down their throat, or we're not going to say, trust us, it's this. We had to back it up with a business case. So we went out and looked at the current environment in the state. The state had 30 different email systems, including GroupWise, Lotus Notes. This is in 2017, right? I mean, by far, some agencies should have been off that. We had some that were on Exchange, but it was like Exchange 2010 and Office 2010, and they had stopped paying software assurance. So they had no upgrades, which means they didn't have security. It was all on-prem. It was at risk in their 40-year-old data center. So that was a problem. We went and looked at the landscape, and we found that there were the incumbent vendor had 60 different agreements with the state at different prices. We said, hey, we want to get to one price, one email system. We want everybody to go to the cloud email. We asked Google the same thing. And, it was many months of negotiating and going back and forth and T's and C's and contracts and whatnot. But when we finally had the results, we presented two options to the governor's office, and one option was half the price of the other. And we said, we can get the state to one email system. We're confident of that. We can do it with Microsoft. We can do it with Google. We're going to defer that decision to the governor. But what we will say, and we felt the numbers did speak for themselves at that point in the value of G Suite. One aside is the security. We did not know. We knew Microsoft was good at providing security because whether it was the HIPAA or the FedRAMP, et cetera, they had a reputation for securing, especially in the public sector. So we thought that it would be more of an uphill climb for Google. But what we found out when we actually, double-clicked and did the deep dive was that the security was much better with Google Cloud. The way they shard the data, that no copy of any one email of ours is ever in one data center to be read by, whether it was a rogue actor or a government gone rogue. And we actually flew one of the years I went to the next conference, met the head of Google Security and Compliance. We flew him to Arizona to have a meeting with our information security officers, the CISO that worked for me and the ISOs that worked for the other agencies. And it was like Q&A. What reservations do you guys have about Google as a platform? What concerns do you have? What questions? And it was, half a day. They asked just about everything they could think of, and he addressed, here's how Google and how the Google Cloud addresses those things. And it provided a lot more comfort with the security that, for a lot of time was just unknown. So there was fear of the unknown with our agencies. But once that became kind of demystified, they understood, okay, this is actually enterprise grade, and it's a level of security better than what we probably have. So anyway, we presented all that. We presented the findings to the governor and said, we can do this. We can do it with either platform. But I will tell you that without a mandate, this will not happen. There will be agencies that find their way out of this.
Because you hadn't fully centralized IT.
We hadn't. No, it was still distributed. So we're a federated state. We have 1,500 state employees. I have less than 10% of those reporting to me. The one thing I have is I can sign off on their funding, what they spend money on in terms of IT, software, services, hardware. But I literally had one agency CIO tell me, as we talked about centralizing email under Google, he said, well, even if the governor says we're going to do that, we're not going to go and you can't make me. I said, okay.
That's what I'm super interested about. Like those, because I know it happens. Even in large organizations that are not public sector, you have departments, divisions, others, for sometimes, I think, valid reasons from the standpoint of ignorance, like they haven't done the homework and they're scared and whatever. So they have this genuine concern. And other times it's just sort of, outside pressure, political pressure, risk aversion, other things that are not maybe logical at all. There's forces that in large organizations, the inertia is so strong. The inertia towards doing nothing or doing the upgrade, of more of the same. That pressure is so high that all throughout the evaluation process, I'm sure, you're getting FUD, you're getting pressure, you're getting political maneuvering, you're getting undermining, misinformation. How do you manage all of those things?
It was funny. You talk about the pressure and the third parties. So we had the Microsoft lobbyists actually tried to have a secret meeting with some of my agencies to plot against this. Like, what are we going to use to come out of this, guy, so we don't have to go? And we actually stationed one of our employees there in the parking lot to take pictures of who walked into his doors.
Come on.
I'm not kidding you.
This is like a movie.
We had one of our agencies forward us the invite. It's like, just so you know, there's active work trying to be done against this. So, so we looked into that. But we told the governor, that without a mandate, agencies will not go. And it can't come from us, it has to come from you. So we had a cabinet meeting. It was August 22nd of 2017. And Chief Adams got up there in front of the agency directors who, worked under the pleasure of the governor. And he told them, we are going to, this state is going to Google. We're going to do it over the next 2 years. He said, some of your IT people will push back on this and try to find reasons why not. Your job as leaders is to manage them through that or manage them out. But this will happen. Wow. Thank you for your participation. He said, see Morgan in the back? I raised my hand. He said, if he calls you, you will take the meeting, you will follow instructions. He's going to reporting back to me on who is and who isn't not doing this. So with that, that support, that backing, the wind in our sails, we went forward. And initially what we did is we knew those agencies that had a lot of complexity, a lot of security, and they would take longer. So we said, we're not asking you to go first, but you are going to have to go. So let's spend these next 2 years planning what are those use cases, what are your concerns, and let's give you more time to get comfortable and to gain, whether it's certification, compliance, before we move you. But the other side we did is like, who's ready to go right now? You had some smaller agencies and boards that frankly wanted to go right away. I think one that was in phase 0 or 1, we did phase 0, 1, 2, and 3. That one of the early phases that like literally switched everybody over to Chromebooks. They're fully on G Suite. They turned off all their Microsoft. It was just full adoption. I mean, there were only like 10 people, but it really showed the power of what is possible if, an agency and their leadership is willing. And you had other people that, would, let's just say some of the financial employees, accountants and whatnots, you can pry Excel out of their cold dead hand. They're not giving up that product.
Right.
And, you had other states like Wyoming that said they did their state budget with a Google Sheet. So we started off with not uninstalling anything, but just like, okay, you're going to be on email and calendar. You're going to have the full power of the Google Suite. And we want everybody to get trained on the new platform. So it was required that every agency employee go through training. We had a great training provider in SADA helping us with that. And then people would say, well, I still need Excel. I still need Word. We said, okay, well, you're going to have a time-based exception. We'll give you 6 months more to use that Microsoft product, but you have to justify why the Google tool won't work. And in these next 6 months, you have to go to training, deeper dive training, to find out if there's a way around that you just didn't know, right? Based on the 30 minutes of training up front. So we're still managing through that project. Will we ever get to 0 Microsoft install in the state? No, but just by going from rental licenses, when we were paying Office 365 for our agencies, we did the math at about $1,000 per user per over 5 years. And to buy a perpetual Excel license, for example, it was $100 one time. So even if keeping, whether it was Word or Excel or whatever product they need, lowered cost by 90% over 5 years. So we still felt comfortable from a financial perspective that we're doing the right thing for the state. But it was funny how the Google tool started to spread, and agencies that started using those, there was some peer pressure that everybody's collaborating in the shared document. Why aren't you? Yeah. This is the slides. Don't send me your version. I'm not going to put those together anymore. I'm not going to send you one version to 17 people. Then you have 18 versions. You got to put them back together. Really, even the governor's office. So as they started leading cabinet meetings and they started doing goal councils where they'd get multiple agencies together to solve the same problem, they said, we're now sending out a link to the Google Slides. Everybody can go in and make their updates. Don't send us anything. And if people tried, they would say, no, your slides are 3 through 6, edit them yourself. That saved the governor's office, they said, 2 days per quarter in time of somebody that, was assistant in that office putting those things together. So just once we started having the snowball effect, once some agencies have it, they would invite other agencies. Once more agencies had it, the use kind of spread. And now, everybody has the Google Suite on their phones. Email, calendar, Hangouts, Drive, and we also started seeing reductions in VPN usage. It really has changed the way that the state worked because, it's easy. And, while we offered Google training, a lot of people were like, well, I actually have had a Gmail account for 10 years, but I haven't used Calendar, for example, right? I haven't used Sheets. So I want training on that, or I want advanced Google training. I don't need the basics.
What's funny? We do a lot of this training. We do all the storytelling, demos, all these things. But what you described was like the actual viral effect.
Yes.
It's so powerful because there's the viral effect and there's like the FOMO, like I'm missing out. Like then there's a forcing function, like the governor's office using those tools. And then once you use it a couple of times in a practical application, when there's a deadline or something like that, it's very hard to go back.
It is.
I can't even imagine doing some of the things we do without real-time collaboration
today. It was a challenge for me recently. I gave a keynote at a vendor conference, and the vendor that was putting on the conference still used Microsoft. And I was sending them Google Slides, and they were sending me Microsoft PowerPoint. And let's just say some things got lost in the translation. I was like, and I looked around. I said, I have a MacBook and I have a Chromebook. I said, I don't have Microsoft's PowerPoint installed on either of these things. Yeah. I was like, do you have a machine that I can actually edit these PowerPoint slides? So I was literally sending them the text that I wanted to use in the body of an email. They were having to paste it into PowerPoint. It's just like, I don't work that way anymore. Like I've evolved, right? It felt like we had moved on. But it's really, you get so comfortable using the tools in the real time. We send Hangouts in the morning to each other if one of us is going to be late or if we need a Hangout, a dial-in setup for the meeting. We always are creating new drives and sharing them with this group or that group. And the work's happening real time across our organization. And it's changed the way we work for the better. There's a lot less frustration with what version are you using and, well, when is yours dated? And, where did you save that? Because what Google started on is the search. You can search for anything. It doesn't matter if it's in my drive or somebody else's, or if it's shared, or I was actually the one creating it. Yeah. Sometimes I forget. You search it, you find it, and it doesn't matter where it is. Everybody can work off the same platform.
Yeah, I gotta show you Cloud Search. It's really good.
Awesome.
Even just the native, even if you're not connecting it to anything else. When I'm looking for content now, I just go to the Cloud Search capability and searching across documents, calendar, and invites, email, all in one interface are really cool. I'll show you later today. But,
awesome.
So there's a couple agencies left. We made a lot of progress, and obviously we met last week in person. It was kind of great to see how much progress had been made, but also, how much there is potentially left to do, right? I think for a lot of our customers, enterprise customers, where we are, here with you guys in this phase is it still very much feels like the beginning of the journey, even though a lot has been accomplished.
Yep.
So as you look forward, and I know some of this is literally things that we are talking about together. We just kind of we went through several options together. But what are you personally most excited about in the next 6 months, year, knowing what you know about all of Google Cloud? I think G Suite is very deep and broad. It's one part of the Google Cloud story, but what are you the most excited about? Like, what do you think is the biggest impact to the state, to the constituents of the state, for the governor? Where's your head with the art of the possible?
So a couple things we've seen over these last couple of years as agencies have gotten more and more comfortable with the platform. There was a demand for whether it was Google Forms or AppMaker. So we actually had some AppMaker training brought in, and then it was like, great, can we put this in GCP? And unfortunately, the state, it was kind of a chicken and egg thing. We had a contract to go to G Suite, but it didn't include GCP. So just in these last couple months, we finally got an addendum to one of our contracts to allow us to go to GCP. So we have some demand there. I'm looking forward to having our agencies have the power to create scripts, create forms, create kind of tools, front-end customer-facing tools on their own without having to bring in a consultant, without having to do this big multi-year, multi-million-dollar IT project to deliver a citizen-facing service. One of the things that we've been efforting to do over these last couple of years is move more services online. I think there was about 200 online when I started. We have about 1,000 now, but they're across multiple websites and domains.
What kind of services?
Citizen-facing services, license permits. We have an e-licensing platform, but it's still, whether or not we're using vendor-supported solutions, custom code, whether we're using Salesforce, there's still a lot of effort to get those services online. My hope is with the ease of the Google tools, AppMaker, Google Forms, we actually can have some agencies have their business users do this a little more real time, a little more on the fly. So that's one of the things I'm looking forward to, just kind of accelerating that and putting it in the hands, taking it out of the hands of the IT team and putting it in the hands of really the everyday users. Second is the data. We were at Next a couple of years ago and met somebody that worked for a healthcare company, and they were like a 4-year-old company. They were born in the cloud. Everything they did was in AWS, but they were telling us how they were moving all their data, in their analytics data, into GCP so they can use BigQuery on it because, they liked what Amazon had to offer. The power of BigQuery was better than the analytics tools they were getting there. So we said, we are also a big Amazon user. That's intriguing to us. So, and regardless of what that company was doing and what kind of data they were analyzing, just to have that extra capability on our menu for our citizens. We have a lot of data. I think we like to say we're data rich and we're information poor. We have it in all these different silos. It's not indexed. It's not linked together. And really, when the governor finally started bringing multiple agencies together to solve similar problems, such as the opioid epidemic, such as recidivism in our prisons, you had to bring these agencies together that had never shared data before and didn't know how and didn't have a platform to do that. So now that we brought in cloud capabilities to be able to have the platforms that they can, bring their data together, ask what-if questions, have models built up, I think that's going to allow us ultimately, the governor and the agencies to make better decisions faster for the benefit of our citizens. So I just think democratizing and unlocking that data is going to be a super powerful tool.
For sure. I think that's the case for many large organizations. It's like the data, it's not easy to create data anymore
right.
or even store the data.
Nope.
I think it's consolidating it, cleansing it, making it meaningful and actionable. It's probably why you're seeing things like the Looker acquisition or even Salesforce buying Tableau. I think the benefits of making great insights out of data, I think, is going to be the competitive advantage of every enterprise looking forward. Is whoever makes better sense of the data, it's probably who's going to win, right?
Yep. And there's opportunity in government to not only give our citizens what they need when they need it, but to predict what they're going to need. And that's just something that, from what I've seen inside of state government, is kind of untapped. I know private industry's been doing it for a while, but we don't have a lot of on-prem data warehouses, and data lakes are still new to us. So we're using the power of the cloud to start building those things now, and the easier vendors like Google make it, the more fast those things will spread.
Going back to where we started, which is like data center, how much of your overall data center footprint today is consolidated or virtualized, containerized? I mean, I know, or in the cloud. By the way, I know you're multi-cloud like every large organization, but
yeah.
How much progress has been made on purely the data center side since you took over?
So we, when we got that report in 2016 that said there's two ways to look at it. The state could save $30 million a year if they consolidated data centers, or the state's overpaying $30 million a year by doing it the way they're doing it. We started, okay, let's solve this problem. We said we're going to tackle it by trying to shut down the state's largest data center. This was a 40-year-old building that was across the parking lot from my office, so I got to see it every day. And
constant reminder.
And the last 3 times it went out was not because of IT equipment failure. It was because of power, because of cooling. It was because of environmentals. So it just wasn't sustainable. I think we had $15 million in deferred maintenance on that building. And if we were going to bring it up to a true tier 3 data center, it was going to take another $50 million. But we're competing with the same general fund that pays for like teachers and cops and doctors. So that wasn't going to happen. Yeah. So we said, you know what? We're going to put a cloud first mandate. We're going to try to shut this place down. We ended up relocating the state network to a tier 3 colo nearby that was on state contract. We ended up saying you had, every agency had 18 months to either relocate their equipment to the colo or move it to the cloud. But what we said is you can't relocate it unless you prove why it can't move to the cloud. So we said cloud first. It's not cloud only. There's a reason that it needs to be on-prem. Keep it on-prem. But when the dust settled and those 18 months ended in December 31st of last year, 15% of all the equipment there was just shut down, which is great.
Wow.
Technical debt, orphan servers, people had requested them and left. We're going to migrate to the new one, leave the old one in place for a little while. A little while turns into years, right? So we shut down 50%. 5% was actually relocated to new virtualized platform in the on-prem data center. And then 80% was moved to cloud. So now, can we maintain that? Hopefully, but what we've now done is ring the bell and said every other state data center, we told our agency CIOs in January of this year that they have the same 18 months to get out of their on-prem data centers as we did for ours. Wow. So it's the remaining 75% of our footprint. The cloud plans were due by June 30th. And now that, GCP is on the menu, they can go GCP, they can go Azure, they can do AWS, they can do Oracle Cloud if they want. We're just saying you can't buy hardware and put it in your basements anymore. We have the colo that is tier 3 available for the stuff that remains on-prem. But starting July 1st, they have 12 months to execute on that. So, when I went, after I told the CIOs verbally that this was the plan, we wanted to put that in writing. And my boss at the time said, no, you shouldn't be sending that to the CIOs. The COO should be sending that from the governor's office, should be sending that to the agency director. So we did. Again, another way that the governor's office has our back. And he sent that out and said everybody has to get out of their data centers by June 30th. And through the governor's cabinet meetings, we're actually going to be reporting on the progress. So we just do stoplight charts green. They've done it. Yellow, they have a date by which they've told us they're going to do it. And red, they're taking a little longer. They might need some help. And you'd be amazed what peer pressure does when you have these highly competitive business leaders that have got to be leading an agency after however many years in the field. And they, the people on either side of them are green. And they're sitting there with a red dot next to their agency name. It motivates them. We actually had one director of a smaller agency come to us after a meeting. He was new, and he said, what do I have to do to never be on that red, on the bottom 5 list again? We told him. And cabinet meeting the following 90 days, he came back, he was in the green, he was on the top. Yeah. And it was just that motivation. We're not telling you have to, we're just reporting that you're not. So it's powerful. So that's one thing I would encourage any of my peers to do, state, city, or county. Just kind of report on which agencies are exhibiting the behaviors that you want to see. Because when the governor asked us, he says, the first thing he ever said to me when he met me was, I'm counting on you for cybersecurity, right? So I had to come up with dashboards on who's doing what we asked for cybersecurity. And that worked to get them all, to increase their cyber posture. We did that same model for Google email. We did that same model for getting out of the data centers, going to the cloud. So it's been working for us. We're expecting more as we lead these cloud initiatives.
It's amazing. In a non-centralized state, the amount of influence really to their benefit, but just the amount of influence you've been able to create is remarkable. I don't think I've seen anything quite like it.
Thanks, Tony. It's been fun.
I think the visibility on the most, the highest stage, red, green, yellow, I think helps. But
yeah,
it's just the governor's office support helps. That's really exciting.
Yeah, it's been a fun 3 years, and we got more work to do. We have a year left to get out of those data centers. We got to complete the G Suite migration, which you were working on with us, and there's a couple other things around the corner that I'm excited about. But yeah, it's a good time to be in at least Arizona state government. I don't envy some of my peers, but what I have told them is, Arizona's available, whether it's to get on a call with your teams, talk about what we've done, whether it's to share documentation or, fly out and talk to your leadership about what these guys could do. I think we had 32 elections last November, 20 new governors, and of that, some of them kept their CIO, so some of my friends are still in places. Some of them have changed over. So there's kind of a new crop of state leaders now, but Arizona's ready and available to help, whether it's G Suite, whether it's cloud, whether it's just moving technology forward. We feel we've done a pretty good job of that, but there's always more work to do.
Hey, super generous of you. You guys heard it right here. The offer's on the table. He can't take it back. We're going to put his contact information in the notes as well.
Please do.
Not your direct cell phone number maybe, but definitely, your Twitter account and stuff like that.
There you go.
Well, Morgan, it's been a pleasure. Thanks for stopping by in LA, checking out a little bit of our headquarters.
Yeah.
I didn't realize you'd sort of reciprocate this quickly. I just came to your office last week on Thursday, I think it was, and you're here on Sunday.
Timing worked out.
I'm glad your personal plans coincided with our new Cloud and Clear podcast. It's been a pleasure having you.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks.
Thank you for listening to Cloud and Clear. Check the show notes for links to this week's topics. And don't forget to connect with us on Twitter @Cloud and Clear and our website, sada.com. Be sure to rate and review the show on your favorite podcast app.